Welcome back to the Go to Go podcast, man. Episode 59, week 5 of the NFL season upon us. This week, got another segment, hot or not. Non-QB MVPs so far through the season. We're going to give a couple of people we think should be in that contention, man. And then obviously our week 5 pick'ems. But before we start week 4, you took the crown, man. 11-5. Me 10-6. Neck and neck now. Everything's even. 40-24 throughout this year, man. 4 weeks in, about a quarter of the way through. But jumping into those hot or nots, man. Let's start you off with one. We're going to talk about him a little bit this episode. But hot or not, CMC will finish as this season's MVP.
So far through the first 4 games this year, it's not a hot take. I mean, now, will he end up winning it? Probably not. We always talk about how it's a quarterback award. Everyone wants to give it to the quarterbacks. But if you look at the landscape so far this year, there's been some good quarterback play. A lot of quarterbacks have been putting up big numbers, but it hasn't really been that one quarterback to separate himself from the pack so far. But when you look at Christian McCaffrey, what he's able to do in that scheme with that offense, he's definitely separated himself. You know, Nick Chubb going down with injury. A lot of running backs banged up, some not playing as well. Christian McCaffrey is about as, consistent, as stable as you can get. I mean, yeah, like you said, we'll talk about him when we talk about most valuable non-quarterbacks. But right now, I don't think it's crazy. I think he'd be the first one to do it since Adrian Peterson in, 2012, coming off that ACL tear. So it's been about 10, 11 years since it's been done. So it'd be a really, really cool feat if he could do it. Definitely be different with the way the league's in the trajectory. Everyone's throwing the ball now, and you see McCaffrey in this San Francisco offense just kind of playing old school, running the ball, not being too fancy, and CMC dominating not as a running back but as a receiver as well. So it's not a hot take right now. Through the first 4 weeks, I would probably say he is the MVP.
Yeah, I was going to ask you if you remembered who the last one was and when it was. AP 2012, obviously. And we talk it's quarterback award, whatnot. But
that's easy.
I'm trying to see who was before AP, LT in 06.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the last non-QBs to win it was 2 running backs. But next up, man, hot or not, the Rams are legit playoff contender.
I would say that is... I'm going to say it's a hot take right now just because it's early. Now, if you want to say they are a playoff contender, I wouldn't argue. Right now, I think they're a fringe wild card team, looking to make a chance, to kind of punch their ticket in, if I would have to guess now. But still got some questions. Matthew Stafford, you saw that last game against the Colts. Banged up, had that ankle injury, I think. Kupp getting healthier, but, is he going to play this week still? Some questions there. McVay saying they want to work him back slow. So still some injury questions and also some O-line questions. You kind of seen that pressure get to Stafford when they lost 2 weeks ago against the Bengals and then against the Colts as well, him getting banged up. So some questions, I think, still on that offensive side of the ball. Defense, Aaron Donald has been playing solid football. He, not looking like his dominant prime self where he was undisputedly the best player, but he's playing really good, so their defense has been okay. But there's just no – if Stafford can stay healthy and Kupp comes back to, the form we saw him play at before, then yes, I think they can. But I just think there's too many questions right now. But what does help him is the NFC does seem to be kind of open right now, although kind of switch where the NFC is looking better than the AFC right now. But I think there's still a way the Rams can make it. But right now, I would pump the brakes just a little bit. I want to see a little bit more from that team. So I'm going to say that's a hot take, but the Rams are definitely a lot higher than I thought, than a lot of people thought. And I think they're trending in the right direction. I just want to see a little bit more consistency before I say they can make the playoffs. So I would say they're a middle-pack team outside in looking at the wild card right now.
I agree, man. Last one up, man. Hot or not, Joe Burrow's doing more bad than good playing hurt.
That's not a hot take, man. I mean, when you look at this Bengals team and this offense and the way they're just not getting anything going. Jamar Chase in the presser after saying he's always fucking open. I mean,
excuse my profanity.
yeah, that's not what you want to hear from your number one star receiver. But he's not wrong. You know, T. Higgins going down with injury. That offensive line, which has always been an issue, just continues to be the bane of Joe Burrow's existence, man. And defensively, they're solid, but that defense is just on the field so much. There's only so much they can do. Joe Mixon looking like he's taking a step back, not as, dominant as he was before. He's serviceable, but he's not adding, any help to Joe Burrow. And like you mentioned, that injury, he's not able to, because Burrow, he wasn't an athletic quarterback, but he was still able to move around a little bit, be elusive in the pocket, go scamper, scramble, get you a first down here and there. But now he's like a statue back there in that pocket, and you can clearly tell it's affecting his game. He's not pushing the ball down the field as much, not able to, avoid those sacks in the pocket and move around. So definitely hindering him. I forgot who they play this week. We'll talk about it, but
Titans. They played
yeah.
the Titans last week.
Yeah, they just played the Titans.
They're playing
and
the
lost.
Cardinals
Yeah,
this
they're
week.
playing the Cardinals. So that's a team they should. I don't know if they'll win. On paper, they should. Cardinals are playing frisky. We'll talk about them, but it's a pivotal game, bro. I mean, if you go into this game and lose on the road, you're 1-4. Your franchise quarterback, who just became the most paid player in the NFL, like, do you want to keep sending him out there? It's just, risking injury, risking, Joe Burrow's play just dropping, and I don't think that's something you would want to do now. Cincinnati hasn't had, the greatest history of treating their franchise quarterbacks and players right, so we'll see. So far, they've been pretty good with Joe Burrow, but I definitely think after this week, if you lose or even if you win, but it's not in a dominant fashion and there's some question marks still around that team, you definitely might want to look to just maybe putting Burrow on the IR, sitting him, resting him, and kind of just chalking this season up and waiting to get back fully healthy next year because, like you mentioned, in the AFC, it's definitely top-loaded, and if you want to compete like the Bengals coming in, they got Super Bowl aspirations. That's their main goal. If you ask anybody in Cincinnati, any of the fans, anyone up there, they think they can and should compete for a Super Bowl. So if that's out of the question at this point, I think you kind of just throw this season to the side, say it was one of those weird seasons, Joe Burrow was injured, just didn't get going, and kind of just look forward to next year because there's no reason to go out there and risk injury to Jamar Chase, Joe Burrow, those really big players. You already lost T. Higgins. He's on a contract year. Not too sure what's going on there. So, I mean, it's already looking pretty bad in Cincinnati. So you might want to just, take the rain delay, call it a season before it gets really worse out there in Cleveland.
Well, in Ohio. You said Cleveland.
Or Cincinnati, not Cleveland. Yeah. Well,
yeah.
Yeah.
But
Cincinnati.
You talked about Burrow's mobility. It's not even his mobility. He can't push the ball downfield. You said it. I think he had 0 throws for 10 or more air yards last week against the Titans, which is really bad considering Deshaun Watson just came off his best career game against those same exact Titans.
Yeah, Justin Herbert tore him up a few weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, the teams have been able to throw on the Titans. They have a really good run defense, but you can throw on the Tennessee Titans, and, yeah, like you mentioned, not a good look.
That's all my hot or nots for this week.
All right. I think I said Cleveland probably because I was looking at my hot or not, so I'll start off with that one. So we'll go hot or not. After a disappointing loss in Week 4, Deshaun Watson was ruled out. Is it true that he is the answer for Cleveland after seeing DTR in that offense without Deshaun Watson?
I mean, it's not a hot take. Now, when you say the answer, it's debatable, in what kind of terms. But when Deshaun was playing bad, there was a lot of talk. DTR, the fan base, we got DTR. He's the answer. Deshaun Watson comes in this week questionable. Didn't really practice at all. He was throwing on the side a little. It was about it. So DTR came in with this. And also, a lot of it is on coaching. I blame Kevin Stefanski for the way the Browns played because he came in with 0 game plan for a rookie quarterback that's never thrown a pass in the NFL. And he didn't get him going. He had his first 2 throws, looked like he had a little bit of a groove. Penalties pushed it back. And then after that first drive, they really couldn't get anything going whenever they had a big play, first down. I think they're getting a little momentum. it stopped. Penalties, penalties, penalties. Once again, Kevin Stefanski coached team, not well disciplined. Jedrick Wills, the worst left tackle in NFL, does not help DTR at all. But Deshaun Watson, man, I know he's made some bad plays, but especially that one where he threw the backwards lateral that was like a pass to Elijah Moore. I mean, that's kind of like a feel thing. You get into game reps, you start feeling the game once again. And, I mean, we saw it against the Titans, him being able to connect on that deep ball with Amari Cooper. Probably should have had 2 touchdowns when they ruled that he stepped out of bounds the first time around and then hit him for the deep ball, which was Deshaun Watson's greatest air yard pass as a Cleveland Brown. And he delivered the ball in there. It looks like he's getting his timing down a little, but the play calling is definitely not helping. So, yeah, you're going to need a very talented player in this system right now with Kevin Stefanski. Is just, I don't know, man. I know the Browns are 2-2, but it's almost like I want him out of there. But regardless, Deshaun Watson, man, you could see the difference out there not being able to put up a touchdown. Run game couldn't get going, nor did Stefanski try to help it at all. And he loves putting Elijah Moore on those end arounds, man. He just got to stop doing that. It's bad, bro. It's bad.
All right. Next one is hot or not. The Patriots have to move on from Mac Jones.
It's not a hot take, but I'm going to say they need to move on from Bill Belichick at this point. I mean, Bill Belichick, you can say what you want. Definitely a winning coach, Hall of Fame coach. We get all that. But Bill, year in and year out, even when Brady was his quarterback, buys into not having a wide receiver, buys into no weapons, values those tight ends more than he does the true skill position on the offense, and then goes out and gets defense. The defense is certainly not looking great this year. Mac Jones has no help whatsoever, and I mean, they just kind of look like nothing without Tom Brady. They made it to the playoffs that 1 year. Defense was a very good defense, and that's probably why they were able to make the playoffs. Mac Jones just game managed. Now they're asking Mac Jones to lead us to victories. Mac Jones really isn't that guy, and I don't think the offense built around him helps at all. So if you want Mac Jones out, I'm not mad at it, but I also think it's time for Bill to kind of hang him up in New England. And maybe his ways of coaching is almost over, because it's tough, man. Go out there and, you got Zeke, who's an aging running back coming off the worst year of his career, and you're saying he's been playing so well, we're going to start him over Ramondre Stevenson, who took Damian Harris's job last year. It doesn't add up. You got Devontae Parker, your number one weapon on the outside, and Devontae Parker was drafted in the 2010, 2011, whatever it was. He's been in the league for almost a decade, and he's an aging wide receiver. And yet, a few years ago, they paid Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith. Jonnu Smith's gone. I mean, it's just the Bill Belichick era. I think it might be time, man, in New England.
Listen, I'm not going to say that's, crazy take, but I can definitely see where you're coming from. There's a lot of finger pointing to go on in New England right now. Let's just say that.
Yeah, and Mac's probably pointing at Bill. Bill's pointing at Mac.
And Mac's not pointing. He's fucking kicking him. Trying to nut tap him.
Who did he do that to? Sauce?
Sauce, yeah.
Yeah.
He's trying to cleat Bill.
A little dirty player.
Yeah. Anyways, all right, the last one I have is hot or not. Both undefeated teams left in the NFL, and the Niners and Eagles are the best teams in the league.
I mean, it's not a hot take. The Eagles, former, NFC champions, went to the Super Bowl last year. After starting slow, they looked to be starting to click, especially that offense after Hurts was able to throw for 300 plus. A.J. Brown got involved. He looked happy on the sideline this week probably. But we know what they bring on defense. Elite. Jalen Carter, stealing the draft. We say that all the time, man. One of the best D tackles in the league right now, not just rookies. But, I mean, you look at the Niners preseason. I had the Niners 2, and I had the Eagles 3 coming into the preseason award or predictions, man. And, I mean, it kind of stacks up like that right now. The Niners they're the number one team in the NFL right now. Every phase of football is just A plus. If you gave them a grade, it's A plus all around. Head to toe, coaching down to the players. They got the best skill positions. They're all elite talents, and not even just skill positions. Every position, they got guys that can play at high levels. And same for the Eagles. I mean, Jalen Hurts, another year under his belt. Can he avoid that second, not second year, but
second year as a starter?
Yeah, it's kind of like a sophomore slump. If he avoids that, I mean, the Eagles are also another team to be in the NFC and might be going head-to-head with the Niners in the NFC Championship this game. And once again, but possibly with a healthy, living quarterback for the 49ers. Regardless, they're the two best teams in the NFC. Chiefs haven't, been the greatest, and the Dolphins, they got some things to work on in the back end. So I would say that they probably are the best two teams right now currently.
All right, those are my 3 hot or nots.
It's going to take us into our non-quarterback MVP awards through 4 weeks of the season. Man, why don't you go ahead and get us started?
All right, well, I'll just get the easy one out of the way, the one we already kind of touched on, and that's CMC. Already kind of covered him. Really not much to say. He's been the best running back. He leads pretty much every single category there is to have for running backs, even receiving. I think he has over 140 receiving yards. So, yeah, in this San Francisco offense, when you kind of watch how they play and you watch how this offense goes, it goes with McCaffrey. And we know Shanahan, that kind of running scheme they have out there, as McDaniels kind of brought to Miami as well. But they use that lateral run, a lot of zone reads and stuff of that nature. And Christian McCaffrey has been honestly a steal of a trade for the San Francisco 49ers team. I believe it was only a 4th-round pick they gave to Carolina for McCaffrey. He's finally back. He's finally fully healthy, and it's not even like they're, limiting his touches. He's getting a complete workload. He's out there every single offensive snap, lining up in the slot, lining up in the backfield. They like to do that thing in San Fran where him and Debo switch spots for a play or whatever. It's pretty cool, but yeah. And then that play action they get off of that run that's so effective really makes life easy for Brock Purdy, and he hits Brandon Ayuk on a 20-yard crossing route that's wide open. So just everything they do in San Francisco is because of how good Christian McCaffrey is, and we already touched on how he could possibly be the league MVP. So yeah, I think when it comes to most valuable non-quarterbacks, he is the epitome of that so far in this season.
459 yards, 5.7 yards a carry, which is insane. 6 touchdowns with 18 receptions and 141 receiving yards. I mean, I got CMC on my list as well. It's insane what he's able to do. And, I mean, the backfield, you mentioned it goes from CMC, they switch him out with Debo, and then you bring out Elijah Mitchell, who – when there was a lot of injuries in San Fran, he stepped up and he became, a top 10 elite running back, whatever you want to put him in that category. He was above average running back. So that just makes it so much more difficult. And now you got Brock Purdy, who has really stepped into his own. I mean, has done everything the 49ers have asked. Obviously, it's an easier situation than most. But for a guy that was drafted last in the draft to come in and be a quarterback like he's been playing in CMC, I mean, he just takes all the pressure off of him. It's easy. You watch these runs, and you're watching CMC run through, break tackles. Like, this guy's a power back. Well, he's supposed to be an elusive back, but his ability to break those tackles and get those big plays out of those that, might just be a 5-6 yard gain that turn into 40 yards down the field is a huge difference. And, I mean, I think they asked Kyle Shanahan, what would you do if you didn't trade for CMC? And he's like, I don't even want to think about that. So it just goes to show you how much they value CMC in that backfield, man. But you go ahead and give me your number 2.
Number 2, I'm going to say TJ Watt. Now, I know this past week against the Texans didn't really have much going on, but I think that just shows how important he is to the Steelers team, where when you take TJ Watt out of the game and you do your best to neutralize his effect, the Texans put 30 points up on you. Like, that's how important TJ Watt is. I think he's tied for the league with 6 sacks. Mm-hmm. And when you watch this Steelers team, he's, without a doubt, the best player on the defense. And I think he also makes that offense really, really good too, because when it's third down and when the Steelers need to play, TJ Watt comes out, he gets the sack, he gets that momentum. But not only does he get a sack, he'll get a strip sack, which, sets up plus field position. They don't have to get that punt. And when you have an offense that's kind of struggling right now with Kenny Pickett, a lot of Matt Canada hate right now going on, it's a lot easier to put points on the board when you only have to go 40 yards instead of 70. So I think TJ Watt is just Micah Parsons is up there in this conversation too. I just think TJ Watt right now so far this season has been playing a little bit better, especially against the run. TJ Watt is definitely like that difference maker and I'm not going to say the only bright spot because they got a few playmakers on that team, but in terms of superstars, TJ Watt is the answer for the Steelers, and he's kind of just backpacking that team right now with everything going on.
As a prime Steelers hater, man, I agree with you. I got TJ Watt on my list. Number 2, yeah, you can't argue what he does on the defensive side of the ball. You mentioned how they end up getting the ball in plus field position. Well, even if it's just a normal sack, I mean, you're punting from farther back, getting your team set up with better field position than probably what you would have. And watching him for, the full game length of a game at least twice a year when they play the Browns, he's always a problem. He's started the season off, I think, with the 3-sack game, and then you go to neutralize him, and even then you're double teaming. And now that frees up Alex Highsmith on the other side, and it sets up for those other guys, kind of like the next person I'll end up talking about. You mentioned Micah Parsons, very elite pass rusher as well, but I feel like that defense is more put together, and at this point, not so much focus on Micah Parsons, even though you obviously have to, given his talent and his skill set. But TJ Watt, when you talk about the Steelers, in a face of a franchise, you don't look at Kenny Pickett. You don't look at anybody on that offense. You look at TJ Watt and say, this is the guy that's been backpacking for us this whole year. I mean, he's put the team on his back, and probably the sole reason that they're, up there in the AFC North right now.
Yeah, and then when you kind of mentioned, he's like the only person like on that defense. Like when you look at all 3 levels and you start naming names, it's like, can you even name them? Like, on the D-line, it's like, yeah, Alex Highsmith and all those guys, but TJ Watt, like you mentioned, creates for them. When you look in the linebacking core, not really much there. And then you get back to the secondary. Yeah, you have Minka, but he plays free safety. On the outside, you look at those corners, Patrick Peterson, Levi Wallace, not the best names out there. So he's definitely, the biggest part on that defense. And when you take him out, you can kind of get exposed like they saw this past week with the Texans, who just got the ball out super, super quick and did their best to neutralize TJ Watt. But when he's going and, he's in that zone, there's arguably, he's the best pass rusher in the game. And you mentioned guys like you'll probably mention right now, Myles Garrett. You got Micah Parsons, Nick Bosa, Max Crosby, I think deserves some credit to be in that elite list. But when it comes to – but all those guys, like, I don't think they're doing it on the level TJ Watt has this season with the talent around him. So and I think he's stood out just a tad bit more.
You mentioned 6 sacks. He's tied for the league lead, but Khalil Mack just went absolutely berserk last week. Same with Josh Allen.
All those in one game.
They're both up there for sack leaders, but obviously, I mean, you got to give credit to Watt. They're not getting the same treatment as Khalil Mack at this point in his career, but
yeah. All right, and then my third one, I have Justin Jefferson. This Minnesota team has been shaky, to say at best. Offensively, especially the turnovers they had, the miscommunication. It just seems like the ball just hasn't bounced the way from Minnesota's way out all this year. Where last year they just like won every single 1-score game. Well, now they're losing all of them, and Justin Jefferson is still producing. He's still playing like the best receiver in the league. He has the most yards for a receiver, and he has the most 20-yard receptions. Like I mentioned, Kirk in this Minnesota offense has seemed to, stalled a bit. But whenever they need a big play, whenever Kirk Cousins is like, all right, we got to have it, he still does his classic, all right, Justin's over there somewhere, throws it up to him, and he continues to dominate. So I think Justin Jefferson is solely one of the main reasons they were able to get those couple of wins they have so far this season. And without him, like if Justin Jefferson wasn't on this Minnesota team, I'm not too sure if they would have any wins. And I think that's how important Jefferson is to this scheme, is to help a quarterback like Kirk Cousins, who doesn't really create much on his own, doesn't really do too much playmaking wise. Whereas Justin Jefferson can take all that pressure off of him and be like, just put it anywhere near me. I'll go up. I'll get it. I'll make that play. Crunch time, when they need it the most, they know they can go his way. So I'm going to say Justin Jefferson.
Yeah, you can't argue his talent. Best receiver in the game right now, man. Trying to get that contract extension and probably well-deserving of the highest paid receiver in the league, man. And you look at the Vikings real quick. It's the turnovers that have been drive killers, momentum, huge swings for opposing teams. And if they could just clean those up, Jefferson a part of it with one of those fumbles diving into the end zone, other things like that, the Vikings, could easily be 3-1 instead of 1-3, as you mentioned, those one-score games. But my number 3, man, you just said it, Myles Garrett. Being a, non-biased Cleveland fan here, Myles Garrett, the double teams he brings each and every single play. When the Browns played the Titans, when Myles Garrett ran from one side to the other, 2 tight ends followed and forced the delay of game just because they didn't want to snap the ball without those 2 tight ends blocking Myles Garrett. It's never before been seen. We saw the crossover, hit a nice little spin move last week out of a double team into a sack, and Lamar Jackson, one of the most mobile quarterbacks. 6 sacks, man, just a presence and the attention that an offense has to bring to Myles Garrett, sort of like TJ Watt. And just being so big and so fast, and his ability to get after the quarterback is never before seen out of a player, his stature. But the way he's able to impact games for the Browns, I mean, when he's not out there, huge difference. When he gets slowed down and people say, where is Myles Garrett? He's fighting a double team and maybe even a chip as well as, that just normal double team. But credit for Myles Garrett. He's up there too. I think he's also tied with 6 or 5.5, something like that. Regardless, he's up there in sacks, man. Bye week this week. Browns will be back next week, but tough start, or tough last week for the Browns against the Ravens. It's going to bring us to our NFL Week 5 pick'ems, man. This one, we got a real good one for Thursday night. The NFL just year after year, Thursday night. They want to bring us the best football of all time. The Chicago Bears are playing the Washington Commanders in D.C., man. Thursday night football. I mean, I'm going to go ahead and rock with the Bears. I like the way they played last week until they just fell apart completely in the second half. Justin Fields looked like a different quarterback. They finally got a little play-action bootleg going, get him out the pocket, let him show, the arm talent that he does have last week. They let him show it. Just fell apart, just the worst way possible to the Denver Broncos. And that fumble 6 that Fields had didn't help at all. But, I mean, the Bears got to get one. They haven't won one since last October. Equinus St. Brown says he doesn't go out unless the Bears win. And he said, I haven't gone out in a long time. Well, I think St. Brown's going out Thursday night, hitting the clubs, man. So it's just, I don't like the way Sam Howell and the Commanders have been, necessarily playing, but I think it's a tough one. Coin flip Thursday night, defensive matchup, low scoring.
I'm going to pick the Commanders. I don't think it's a coin flip. I think the Commanders are pretty much the better team here, and I will give you credit. Justin Fields and the Bears look a lot better offensively last week, but that was because they were playing the Denver Broncos, who just had 70 put up on them by Miami. And then they come back and give Justin Fields his, first career 300-plus yard game passing ever. So I think that speaks more on the Denver defense than it does this Chicago offense. And the Commanders have been pretty solid this year defensively. And then Sam Howell, he's been pretty good. Some decisions he makes are questionable, but at the end of the day, I think he's a really tough quarterback. He stands in the pocket. He let it rip. He was very competitive in that Philadelphia game, almost won it for him, scored on that very last play. He can make throws, and he's a tough guy. He hangs in there. So against the defense that will be nowhere as good as that Philly defense. Then before that, they played the Bills, I believe. So a 2 tough stretch game. This is a get-right game for the Commanders. The Bears is a perfect team, after playing 2 of arguably the best teams in the league. you get the Bears, who are right now the worst team in the league, sitting with the #1 overall draft pick. And I think Sam Howell gets back on track, and this Commanders defense makes everyone, question Justin Fields again. His offense doesn't look good because they got some players on that Commanders defense. That D-line especially. Chase Young, he looked healthy again last week. They got those two on the inside with Jonathan Allen and Deron Payne. Those two D tackles who are really good as well. And they got some guys that can cover on the back end too. So I think this Commanders team is just better than the Bears. So I'm going to pick the Commanders here.
Sam Howell's second most sacked quarterback so far in the NFL this year.
Yeah, that is the only thing is he's been getting pressured a lot. But, he's standing in there. He's taking hits, but he's also making some nice throws.
No doubt, man. Next game up, another London game for the technically road team, but the home team, Jags. They play the Buffalo Bills, man, in London. And when I made this pick, I didn't really think about it, but I picked the Bills. I'm going to stick with it, man. But I wouldn't be surprised. Jags' second home, their true home over there in London. But I think it's going to be a good game, man. Last week they played the Falcons over there, got the dub on Toy Story. But the Jags right now aren't playing, up to par and how we kind of expected them to continue off last season. They almost restarted like they did last year, started off really slow and then became the best second half team in the NFL. Kind of doing something a little similar, records a little bit better, but playing a tough game against the Bills. Watching the Bills last week and that defense, they look good. That D-line is looking really good. Greg Rousseau's looking phenomenal for the Bills. They lost Trey White to a non-contact Achilles injury. Tough break for them, but they really shut down that Dolphins offense, and then Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs looked like that duo they were 2 years ago when they were connecting for, the best duo in the NFL. They're on the same page, and James Cook is slowly come on as, a great young back, receiving and rushing, and the Bills are starting to run that football a little bit more, and it takes pressure off when you get a 5-yard gain on first down. It takes that pressure off Allen, those big plays. Big play Gabe over there as well. I mean, I think the Bills right now, they're on the right page and kind of the Bills we expected to be all year. So I got the Bills.
Yeah, I don't hate that take at all. I think the Bills are definitely the better team here. But the reason I'm picking the Jags is because I think this game means more for the Jags. You kind of touched on it. If we think the Jags are this team that, coming into the season, we thought they could have this high-powered offense. We wanted to see, Trevor Lawrence take that next step and become an elite quarterback. Well, these are some of the games they have to win, Like you mentioned, they're home away from home, over there in London again. I think that'll, help give them an advantage. They've been over there already for a week or two, so they don't have, to deal with that time adjustment and all that stuff like the Bills will. And I also think, the Bills coming off a massive win last week at home. We saw them play very, very physical. I think that game kind of took a lot out of the Bills, and we could kind of see them maybe overlook the Jags a bit here on the road after just beating that Miami team and everyone saying they were the best team in the league. The Bills definitely made a statement, but if the Jags want us, to take them seriously and they want us to believe they can compete with these other top AFC teams like the Buffalo Bills, then I think this is a must-win game. And if they don't win, then it's kind of like the same old Jags. Maybe they'll squeak into the wild card, but ultimately right now, if you want to say they aren't even the best team in their division, I mean, it's hard to argue because if you look over at the Texans and the way C.J. Stroud is playing, I mean, can you really argue that? So if the Jags, want to reclaim that crown, they want us to take them seriously, they have to beat this Bills team, and I can see it happening. So I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt, and I'm going to pick the Jags here.
Next game up, the New Orleans Saints. They play those New England Patriots we talked about earlier in the podcast, man. I mean, head to toe, they look like they're in shambles from offense to even defense. They didn't score a touchdown. It was Bill Belichick's worst loss in his NFL career. And he also did coach for the Browns at one point. But, I mean, Derek Carr reports saying, he's going to be back healthy this week. He played last week. Really didn't look like himself at all. Chris Olave I mean, there was almost no offense for the Saints. Alvin Kamara, another week back after playing. And, I mean, on the road, I got the Saints. I just don't like the way the Pats look. Who's their quarterback? Are they going to stick with Mac or Zappy? I don't know if they announced that yet.
I
But
think it's Mac.
so they're sticking with Mac, regardless of what it is. I mean, it's going to take, a big underdog performance at Mac Jones at this pace. Sort of what we saw from Zach Wilson on Sunday Night Football. But I got the Saints, man. That defense is looking solid as well. Not playing really good, not playing really bad. So got the Saints on the road after taking a tough L last week. They bounced back.
Yeah, I picked the Saints here as well, and I kind of went back and forth, but I think I'm going to stick with them. I just think they're slightly the better team. Now, offensively, the Saints are not impressive at all. Alvin Kamara had his first game back. They tried to make it a point to get him the football, and they definitely did. He had 13 receptions for 33 yards. I believe that's the lowest total in NFL history for a player with 13 receptions or something crazy like that. They just weren't able to push the ball down the field at all. Like you mentioned, Chris Olave with 1 target and 4 yards. And I know because I had him starting in my fantasy lineup. Shaheed didn't get that big target down the field like he usually does from Derek Carr. So there's a lot of questions to be had on that Saints offense. Not a big fan of the play calling. And their defense is solid, and I think ultimately is what keeps them in this game on the road. And what ultimately gets them the win. Like we touched on, Mac Jones and the Patriots. I mean, when Hunter Henry's your leading receiver, that in 2023, that leaves a lot. It's just not much going on there. Ramondre Stevenson not getting going like we thought he would coming into the season. Defensively, they lost Matt Judon, I believe, for a couple months. I think he tore his pec or something like that. And
Christian Gonzalez.
Standout rookie Christian Gonzalez went down as well that last game. That was their 2 best players on defense by far. And losing both of them definitely hurts. So I think this is going to be a very low-scoring game. I mean, maybe we see 2 touchdowns from both of these teams, but ultimately I think it'll be an ugly game, and I'm going to give the slight nod to the Saints defense.
Next one up, man. We got the Tennessee Titans travel to Indianapolis to play the Colts, man, and AFC South showdown. Titans, really the exact opposite of the Colts. Colts young team, Jonathan Taylor, might be coming back. Don't know, maybe next week as well. But there's only one sole reason I picked the Titans in this matchup, and it's Derrick Henry owning the AFC South. His whole career, Anthony Richardson, he looked okay, back from that concussion. He was kind of leading the forefront for rookie quarterbacks before he got hurt, and C.J. Stroud just continued to be consistent. So, not knocking, Anthony Richardson or the Colts. I think they got, possibly a bright future with him, but the team, it just doesn't really stack up. And Derrick Henry, I mean, he's pulverized this division for years, and I still think he's got it in him. Had a great week last week, bouncing back after the abysmal game against the Browns. So, Titans, big road win, AFC South, maybe give them a little life at this point in the season.
Yeah, if the Titans win this game, it's going to have to be because of Derrick Henry, because right now I don't think anyone else on this offense can produce for them. So I'm going to pick the Colts, man. Anthony Richardson, he's, like you mentioned, he's super, super dynamic, fun to watch with the ball in his hands, going to make a lot of big plays running and throwing. You just want to see a little more consistency, and I think that comes along, with him playing more. But I like this Colts team at home. They were very competitive last week against the Rams, who are a solid team, almost made that comeback. They just didn't get a chance to touch the ball in OT, so sometimes that's what it comes down to. But ultimately, I think Derrick Henry will have a big game, but I think Anthony Richardson comes in and kind of proves that, quarterback is more important than a running back in this league. He makes a couple of big plays at home, and, the Colts finally get that feeling of we got our guy. So I think AR makes a couple nice plays this game. Like we mentioned, it's hard to run on the Titans, but you could definitely throw on them. So I want to see Anthony Richardson air the ball out, make a couple nice plays through the air, and I think he does. So I'm going to pick the Colts at home in the divisional matchup.
Next game up, man, another divisional matchup, this time taking it to the north in the AFC North, the Baltimore Ravens going up against the Pittsburgh Steelers, man. And I haven't particularly loved the way the Ravens have played, but they have won football games, and at the end of the day, all you can look at is that win-loss record at the end of the season. And the Steelers on a total opposite end, their win-loss record, I guess, is pretty good for what they have shown on the field this year, because it's just not good football offensively. They are dead last in every statistical category you could imagine on offense. And, whether it's Kenny Pickett, Matt Canada, whatever you think it is, combination of both, I'm not buying into that offense. The Ravens, I know they blew out the Browns last week. They didn't look too good, even offensively. The Browns were throwing them fits, and it just came down to the Ravens had the ball all game. Something had to click. I mean, regardless of it, TJ Watt, if the Steelers want to have a chance, it's going to have to be, on that Steelers defense or someone offensively stepping up. Maybe they give Jalen Warren the number one workload, which I doubt. But I got the Ravens on the road. Lamar Jackson, expect him to make a couple big plays, and maybe you kind of see that Ravens offense finally blossom under that new system.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm going to pick the Ravens here as well on the road, but this has classic Steelers win rain all over it. On the road against CJ Stroud, young quarterback, you get blown out. You get 30 points put up on you. Did they even score a touchdown? I don't think they scored a touchdown.
So. 3 points maybe?
Yeah, they didn't even score. I think they had 6. They didn't score a touchdown at all on the road. Well, you come back home against a familiar opponent, the Ravens, who you've played well. Like you mentioned, offensively, the Ravens haven't looked, crazy, but they've been good enough. So maybe, TJ Watt strip sack, the ball bounces the right way, interception here or there, and then the Steelers are up and they're just running the clock out. But I can definitely see that happen. This game is classic Steelers win. Then you get the Steelers fans saying they're the best team in the AFC North, that Mike Tomlin is the best coach, and that you're just gonna hear it from everyone. George Pickens has a nice catch on the sideline. He's the best receiver in the league. I've seen this game way too many times from the Steelers. But I'm going to pick Lamar Jackson in the Ravens, who I think are slightly the better team. Kenny Pickett banged up, had that knee injury, questionable to play next week. Najee just looks worse and worse every week, looking like the second coming of Trent Richardson. So
he looked good last week.
Well, he looked better. You're correct. He did look better, but still, compared to Jalen Warren, he just looks so much more explosive. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think the Ravens are slightly the better team, so I'm going to pick the Ravens here. But it has Steelers win written all over it.
I like that Trent Richardson comparison. It's kind of like that Browns game when Nick Chubb got hurt. I mean, it literally came down to strip sack, scoop and score. Watt scooped and scored for the Steelers to win. And then you got Steelers fans talking about the Browns, and they didn't even have a possession in the red zone. But it's going to lead us to our next game, man. Panthers, they traveled to Detroit to play the Lions, who are red hot right now, apparently, in that NFC North, and the leader of the pack, man. The Panthers, the total opposite at the NFC South. They kind of look like they're in shambles. I mean, their best game was when the rookie quarterback was out, and it's just the play calling, Bryce Young being really young, and the weapons not really there for him. It's a tough game on the road against this Lions team, and when they seem to be clicking on almost every single cylinder other than handing Jahmyr Gibbs the football, who they drafted to be their guy. But other than that, man, the Lions, I got them at home. It should be an easy win, but, it's the NFL. Maybe the Panthers put up a little bit of a fight.
Yeah, I think the Lions get a pretty nice, well, not even a nice win. They win comfortably here at home. Jared Goff is the best quarterback in the NFL when he's playing in that dome for the Lions. So I think they get a comfortable victory here. Like you touched on, Bryce Young, he's been banged up a bit this season. Weapons, not much out there to be desired. Kind of tough. You never really see those guys get open. Run game non-existent for them as well. So hopefully brighter days ahead for the Panthers, but right now it's pretty grim. Lions are literally on the exact opposite, whereas things have been looking up for a while, and it kind of feels like they're finally stepping into that limelight, finally able to say that the Lions are a good team, which I don't think I've ever been able to say my entire life. So cool to see that. I think Detroit gets rolling. Jameson Williams, I believe, is back from that suspension that got lifted. Yeah, so maybe you see him get worked in just a little bit. I know he's basically a rookie at this point. So it'll be fun to see how they add that explosive dynamic weapon for them. But yeah, I think the Lions are just a better team here defensively. Aiden Hutchinson has been playing really, really good. I think he has the most pressures in the league so far. So it'll be fun for Lions fans to see him get out there, Bryce Young. Not for Panthers fans, but I think the Lions have their way at home against the Panthers.
No doubt, man. Next game up, Houston Texans. We just spoke about them. They traveled to Atlanta, play the Falcons, man. And the Falcons, there's just not much to be excited about other than Bijan at this point. And that running game between him and Algier. Houston Texans, on the other hand, first off, them uniforms last week with the red helmets, need to wear those every week. The best unis Houston's ever put out. C.J. Stroud, he's got the city behind his back. The fan base is very hype. You know, former OSU guy, knows how, you know, to lead a team from the front, and a guy that's been in the NFL for not a year, rookie year. He's leading this team by example right now, and he's doing it very well, taking care of the ball mostly, throwing touchdowns. I think he's top 5 in passing touchdowns right now. I mean, he's throwing for 300 yards in a couple games. He's just looking real good. Connections he has with those guys, Nico Collins, Tank Dell. I mean, the whole receiving core, they're getting their touches. Dameon Pierce taking a solid, you know, reign at the running back position. And DeMeco Ryan, first-year head coach, he's got this team playing together. I got the Texans on the road against the Falcons.
Yeah, these are another two teams who are kind of like in exact opposites, but from the quarterback position, C.J. Stroud, I mean, when it comes to, you know, just like in terms of brightest futures, you know, exactly what you want to see from your young quarterback, C.J. Stroud has it. He's on pace to like blow out every single rookie passing record there is right now. He's just dealing, still has yet to throw an interception as an NFL quarterback, and that's what you love to see as a Texans fan, protecting the ball, putting points up, getting yards, and they're throwing the ball all over the place. I mean, it's not like they're leaning on the run game here in Texas. They're leaning on C.J. Stroud and his arm and his ability to read, anticipate, and be accurate with the football. And then you have the Atlanta Falcons, on the other hand, who have Desmond Ridder, who, I mean, he just doesn't look like the answer at all. And it's not like he's a rookie who maybe you want to see some, you know, some progression from him. He is still young, only played a couple games last season, so this is like his first year as a starter. But, you know, he hasn't really shown any flashes, shown you anything, you know, as what you want to see from a franchise quarterback. But like you mentioned, Bijan Robinson is the best thing on this team offensively. He's going to break some ankles, make a highlight play, you know, break off a couple big runs. But at the end of the day, in this league, in the NFL, when you're going up against teams like the Texans, like these other great passing teams who are going to be able to put up a lot of points, they're going to be able to just move the ball at will through the air. At some point, you're going to have to drop back and throw the ball in. I think the Falcons have talent on the outside to do this at times, but offensively and from the quarterback position, they just can't really get it done. So I think the Texans they get a comfortable win here on the road against the Falcons.
It's going to lead us to our next game, man. Finally get the New York Giants out of prime time as they head to Miami to play the Dolphins. Saw a stat, Daniel Jones 1-11 on prime time. So maybe
he's a new Kirk.
Yeah, I think it literally is, because I think they've played 3 games so far in prime time, or is it 2 only?
I know they played week 1 and
this week at least.
Past week, yeah. And
then they also played a Thursday night game, I think. Yeah, they played a Thursday night game as well.
They did against the Niners.
Yep, so 0-3 in prime time this year. Not really looking good. Their only win was in that maybe it was a 1 o'clock window. Maybe 4, because they played the Cardinals.
At Arizona, yeah.
Yeah, so that's their only win. They finally get out that primetime slot. Maybe you see something, but that offensive line is atrociously bad for the Giants. Saw a clip, Evan Neal, where I think it was Isaiah Hodgins went to chip block, pushed his receiver off the chip block, basically ran a stunt for the other team, just allowed a free run at Daniel Jones that led to the pick 6 that really just sealed the game as the Giants were driving down the field. So can't put all the blame on Daniel Jones at this point. He hasn't looked great, but he's been under pressure. I think he is the most sacked quarterback in the NFL right now. If not, he's definitely the most pressured. He's dropping back, has no time, and really hasn't looked good. So maybe this is a storyline for the Dolphins, who have had literally no pressure go against opposing quarterbacks this year. They finally get that pass rush game going. I mean, you got Bradley Chubb. Jalen Phillips has been out a little. Van Ginkel's been the only bright spot in that pass rushing role. Jerome Baker's looked bad at the linebacker position. Literally everyone on the defense, besides maybe Van Ginkel and Javon Holland, have played bad football so far this year. Whether it's Fangio's, new defense he's running, but leaving Kader Kohu on Stephon Diggs all day when you got a corner and you pay one of the most in the league in Xavier Howard, and you're leaving a slot corner one-on-one on the outside with one of the best route runners in the NFL and Diggs, it's just not a recipe for success. So not liking what I've seen from Fangio so far on the defensive side of things. Offensively for the Dolphins, Tua was staring down receivers last week. Kind of just didn't look like they had the timing down whatsoever. The groove wasn't there. Scored a couple touchdowns against a tough defense. Give him credit for that, but you're not going to be able to score 40 every game. So I want to see that defense step up. You're playing a struggling Giants. Get some momentum this week. I got the Dolphins at home, man.
Yeah, I think with the Giants, they definitely got some issues going on there. The Dolphins, who they're funny enough, they're playing, put up 70 on the Broncos, yet the Giants I think they still have the worst point differential in the NFL, which is absolutely crazy. So coming in from Miami, you mentioned they can't score 40 points every game. Well, this is probably a game they can score or go over 40 points against this Giants team. The Giants just haven't been clicking at all offensively, and it's because they haven't had Saquon Barkley, which shows that, the Giants probably shouldn't have paid Daniel Jones. Probably should just franchise tagged him and kind of look towards Saquon Barkley, because he's pretty much the reason this offense goes. Daniel Jones hasn't looked good at all, but like you mentioned, he's not getting much help from those receivers, those outside guys, and that offensive line. Whereas the Dolphins, tough loss last week against a Bills team that just looked more physical, But I think the Dolphins are still a really good team in this league. Got to get some things cleaned up defensively, like you touched on, but offensively, I think this is a really good game to get things clicking again. And I think we see another big output from the Dolphins offensively back at home, back in Miami Gardens. So I'm going to pick the Dolphins here.
That's going to lead us to Cincinnati Bengals, man, who we just spoke about not too long ago. They played the Arizona Cardinals, and all things aside, the Cardinals have surprised me and probably all of the NFL at this point in the season. Team that we expected to be the front runners in the Caleb Williams sweepstakes. Your guy, Jonathan Gannon, stepped into a nice role as the head coach. Everyone's making fun of him this offseason. His motivational speech is maybe not there, but he's got these guys playing, at a nice level. Josh Dobbs has come in, who's a veteran quarterback, but not a lot of experience. Very knowledgeable guy. Spent a lot of time at Tennessee. Knows, the game of football very well. And he's like one of the, not the best, but he has led this team to some wins, and he has played good football, putting your team in position to win. And when you have a roster like they do in Arizona, it's tough when you don't have a superstar quarterback to lead your team, and franchise quarterback like they did with Kyler Murray before he went down. But Dobbs has played very well. This team has looked good. James Conner has slowly been, one of the most, sure running backs in the league right now this year. And, right now, everything's going right for the Cardinals almost. Everything's going wrong for the Bengals. So if Joe Burrow steps on that field, man, give me the Arizona Cardinals.
Yeah, I'm going to pick the Cardinals here as well at home. Like you mentioned, Josh Dobbs coming on. He's been competitive in every single game they've played this year, and they've played some tough teams. Beat the Cowboys, played a competitive game against the 49ers, was able to move the ball, a couple nice long drives against that, really good defense. So besides, week one where he just came in and didn't even know the offense at all, once he's gotten comfortable in this system, Josh Dobbs has shown that he's been able to play some really solid football. And like you mentioned, Bengals, Joe Burrow, haven't been able to move the football. Things have not been clicking for that team offensively at all. So I'm going to pick the Cardinals here as well. Zach Ertz, rookie Michael Wilson. Those guys have been getting involved. James Conner, like you mentioned, Hollywood Brown. They got some solid players out there. So I think the Cardinals get a nice W here at home.
It's going to lead us to your Philadelphia Eagles, man. We talked, about the Eagles and this other team, the LA Rams, man. SoFi Stadium. Probably be more Eagles fans than Rams fans out there per usual. But, the Eagles 4-0. Just got a tough win last week. A very good win. Gritty game coming down into overtime. And the Eagles, man, I think they just, week 5 maybe, just a little bit of that beginning fatigue. I think the Rams kind of squeak one out at home here. No, SoFi's not that big of home field advantage and whatnot, but I got this game ended up being, kind of a high-scoring game. Puka Nacua is on track for being better than Cooper Kupp did when he broke the receiving record. And the way Stafford's been able to connect, if he's looking healthy, you mentioned Aaron Donald earlier, not, the best player defensively as he was before, but still a really good defensive tackle that causes many problems. And the Eagles are going to have the game plan for Aaron Donald on the other side. I just expect Matthew Stafford to continue this role he's on with this Rams offense. And I said it to you, I think it's a little bit of a trap game. I know the Rams aren't that bad. They're a middle-of-the-pack team. But I think the Eagles on the road just let up just a little too much, hand the Eagles their first loss of the season, and it's going to leave one undefeated team left.
Well, I've liked what I've seen offensively from the Eagles as the season has gone on. Jalen Hurts looking a lot more comfortable running that offense. I think he had his best game so far this year. A.J. Brown, like you mentioned earlier, he's been getting involved. Devontae Smith, he's coming along and making some clutch catches when we need. And the most important part, I think, is DeAndre Swift in that running game, just making things a lot easier for everyone on that offensive side of the ball. And when you can just turn around and hand the ball to a playmaker like DeAndre Swift or even Kenny Gainwell, who had a decent game, a serviceable running back, they can get those 4 and 5 yards and just stay ahead of the chains. And not to mention Dallas Goedert, who hasn't even gotten involved yet. So offensively, I think it continues to click here. The only issue I see this Eagles team having, and I can see them losing. So, I'm not going to sit here and fight you about you picking the Rams because I could definitely see it, is this secondary, man. Eagles are banged up in the secondary, and what does Sean McVay and this Rams team do the best is throw the ball. So I can definitely see Puka Nacua having a really solid game against this secondary. If Cooper Kupp comes back, that'll be a really, really big help for this team, and I can definitely see them making a couple big plays over the top and beating this team, because right now that's really the only glaring weakness I see up front. I believe the Eagles have 4 or 3 players with 6+ pressures. Hassan Reddick was able to get to the quarterback last week, finally playing without that cast on his hand. Josh Sweat and Jalen Carter continue to be dominant up front. So we mentioned that O-line for the Rams and Matthew Stafford being banged up. I think the D-line kind of helps the secondary here, make a couple of big plays up the front. Don't let Stafford be able to hold on to that ball and hit Puka down the field and kind of just keep everything in front of him. Not really much of a run game for the Rams as well, although Kyron Williams has scored a bunch of touchdowns in the red zone. I don't think they'll be able to move the ball on the ground against the Eagles. So I think this Eagles front 7, those linebackers, haven't been the best in coverage, but Zach Cunningham and Nicholas Morrow have been flying around in the run game, making some nice tackles. So I think this front 7 plays good enough on the defense, a couple of big plays from the offense to kind of, hide that secondary from being exposed, although I do think the Rams will have a couple of big plays, but I just think up front the Eagles are going to be a lot better and win this game in the trenches. So I'm going to pick Philly on the road here, but I could definitely see Matt Stafford and the Rams airing it out, a couple of big plays down the field, and Eagles fall behind. So I don't hate it. I just think the Eagles are the better team, though, at the end of the day.
Yeah, they are the better team for sure. Yeah. I'm not going to argue with that, but it's going to lead us to our next game, man. The New York Jets, they play the Denver Broncos, and Zach Wilson, the only quarterback to outduel Patrick Mahomes. I think we all seen that stat. Taylor Swift now thinks Zach Wilson's, better than Patrick Mahomes at football or whatever, all the Swifties. Give Zach Wilson his flowers for that game, man. There's a lot of criticism on his back. And, in the New York media, the lights are the brightest, and you feel the pressure. And for a young guy that, when he came into the Jets, it was a bad it was a bad team. Straight up, it was a bad team. Now I think he's finally learned I don't have to make the best plays. I just got to make the plays that are there. And right now, last week we saw him do that. I mean, he dropped a couple dimes in there as well that were tough throws that you kind of expected him to make coming out of BYU and that big arm that he has. They're playing the Denver Broncos, who just beat the Bears last week in the garbage bowl. But I mean, I don't think there's many bright spots for the Denver Broncos here. The Jets, we know the defense is elite, if not one of the best top 3 defenses in the NFL. Zach Wilson, if he gets it going, Breece Hall, that running game over there in New York as well. Right now, I think, even though the Jets lost, I think there is still a shining light into the season for New York and the possibility of maybe squeaking out a wild card and seeing what happens. I'm not buying the Broncos. Javonte Williams injured. Russ and Sean Payne, what's going on there? Just give me the Jets.
Yeah, we mentioned the Broncos. We've talked about them. I mean, defensively, 2 weeks ago, get 70 put up on you, and then last week, give Justin Fields his best passing game as an NFL quarterback. And if you're Zach Wilson coming into this game, coming off your best game as an NFL quarterback against a very good Kansas City defense, against, Patrick Mahomes, the best quarterback in the NFL. We all know how good he is. I mean, I don't think there's a better confidence game out there for you if your name is Zach Wilson playing against the Broncos. Now, maybe if it was at home, that'd be the icing on the cake. But against this Broncos team, I don't think it really matters. So, confidence is so important as a quarterback, and Zach Wilson has to be feeling really good after that performance against the Jets. And if he's able to go on the road against this Broncos team and just continue to build confidence, I really like what you said. Kind of realize that he doesn't have to make all the plays, just make the plays that is there for him. I think this Jets team can be really good. And, you've seen Aaron Rodgers down on that sideline. He's walking around. He's hanging around. That slim chance of him returning is lingering back behind everyone's mind. So if Zach Wilson and this team can do enough just to get him there, who knows what will happen. But I'm with you here. I think the Jets, this defense against this Broncos team gives them fits, and offensively, I think Zach Wilson continues to improve off of that really, really good game he had last week. Continues to build confidence, and hopefully we can see this guy turn around his NFL career, because it was pretty bleak there for a moment. So I'm gonna take Zach Wilson on the road here with the Jets. Didn't think I'd be saying that this year anytime soon, but yeah, give me the Jets.
Yeah, same. I mean, when you got the best quarterback of your franchise and Joe Namath saying he saw enough. Yeah. If that doesn't put your chip on it, I know Zach Wilson's a young guy, but this is the NFL. If that doesn't put a chip on your shoulder to just go out there and just play freely, because if at this point you weren't, that should just let it fly, man. What do you have to lose at this point?
Yeah, and then, the way he played against the Chiefs, who, like I mentioned, one of the best defense. I mean, he's watching film of the Broncos. He's got to be, like a kid on Christmas, man. Like, if I'm a bad NFL quarterback, like, this is a team I want to play, bro. Like, they give up passing yards. They're not good at all on defense. Like, this is a get-right game. This is a confidence-building game, and that's exactly what Zach Wilson needs. So, I think this is the perfect matchup for Zach Wilson.
Eyes are lighting up, man. That's going to lead us to the Kansas City Chiefs playing the Minnesota Vikings. 4 o'clock window, so not prime time, man, but we know what's going on, man. But Chiefs, they squeak a win, refs or whatnot. I mean, I've known it for years. I don't know if the NFL and everyone else is just now realizing it, because it's happening to bigger teams other than Cleveland, but regardless of the fact.
Is that 2018, 2019?
2020.
Oh, was it? It was 2020. Yeah.
Baker's not last year, second last year in Cleveland, his best year in the NFL. AFC divisional matchup. It should have been Browns, but they still could have beat Chad Henne. He threw it to win the game. Regardless of the fact, we're talking about 2023 football. Chiefs, Vikings. I mean, Chiefs on the road over there, Skull Nation in Minnesota. Vikings have been struggling to get some wins with just one win on the year. Chiefs, playing Pat Mahomes playing, probably the worst game he's played this season, turned the ball over twice. It's tough, man. I think the Chiefs slow down a little bit against this Vikings team. I don't think the Vikings turn the ball over. We talked about that was their worst problem this year, was turning that ball over. They take care of the football. I think they have a good chance to beat the Chiefs. And the Chiefs, I think, they drop a game and probably the only other game they'll drop the rest of this year. But I think, the Vikings get a tough home win and kind of make a statement that they're still here and they're going to battle all season long.
You said it's the only other game the Chiefs drop all year?
Well, in the regular season, probably.
So
I have to look at the schedule, but they might lose 2 more. But this early in the season to drop 2 for the Chiefs is kind of like unheard of in the Mahomes, Yeah, I probably hyped them up a little too much.
Yeah, I'm going to pick the Chiefs here on the road. I just think Patrick Mahomes, he doesn't have 2 games as bad as he did last week, back-to-back like that. Tough game against the Jets, who have a really good defense. So this is definitely be a scale back defensively for the Vikings. And then offensively, like you mentioned, they just seem to just not like having the ball on offense. I don't know. And this Chiefs defense, although they had a tough time with Zach Wilson, which is kind of crazy to say, I think they get back on track against Kirk Cousins here on the road. Justin Jefferson, he's going to do what he always does. He'll have his receptions. He'll have his, 100, 150 yards and maybe a touchdown or 2. But ultimately, I think Patrick Mahomes does enough, makes enough plays, makes the right plays, and kind of keeps this Vikings offense off the field and just picks away at this Vikings defense. So I think the Chiefs get a pretty comfortable victory here on the road.
Sunday night football, man. The Dallas Cowboys and their scorching hot defense. They travel to play the best team in the NFL, in my opinion. Cowboys, Niners, Sunday night football. And we finally get the primetime matchup that, the NFL is kind of aiming for at this point in the season. Two top-tier teams going head-to-head in the Sunday night showdown to, end your football Sunday, man. I think it's going to be a good one, man. Probably game of the week right here. Rightfully so, the Cowboys defense, other than the one game where it was against Arizona where the whole team fell apart. They're the top scoring defense in the NFL, and they're playing the 49ers, who arguably are, one of the best defenses in the NFL as well. It's going to come down to, can Dak Prescott do the job? And I think we always talk about the Cowboys and that endless cycle. And I just think, after last week, Cowboys bounced back with a nice win. I just don't see the Niners losing right now at this point in time. They're clicking on every cylinder. CMC, we're calling for MVP. Non-quarterback, at least through this point, whatever it is. The 49ers on this big of a stage, I think the Cowboys have much more to lose here, but I still see the 49ers getting that dub. And I just see Dak folding just a little bit, man. You said when the pressure's on, Dak forgets how to play when he's not playing comfortably.
Yeah, so now I'm going to say all this stuff about the Cowboys, but I am not a Cowboys fan at all. Cowboys are probably my least favorite team in the NFL. So it's weird for me to say this stuff, but I think the Cowboys can beat the 49ers on the road. And like you mentioned, both of these defenses are really good, arguably the 2 best defenses in the league. And I think this is going to be the biggest test for both offenses so far this season. And ultimately, I think it's just going to come down to both defenses are going to play really well. We know that. I think it's going to come down to which quarterback do you think can make the biggest plays. And if you ask me, Dak Prescott or Brock Purdy, right now I think I'm going to take Dak Prescott. Brock Purdy, he's still super young in his NFL career, and we haven't really seen him make big plays when it matters. We haven't seen him lead this team, create plays himself, whereas we've seen Dak do it, but like I mentioned, it's usually when he's comfortable. So I think we're going to have to see a big game offensively here for the Dallas Cowboys. I think CeeDee Lamb gets involved. Tony Pollard in that run game is definitely going to have to get going. Ferguson has been a nice addition for that tight end, almost like a safety blanket for Dak. Michael Gallup, he's back fully healthy. He's looked really nice as well as a number 2. So this O-line has been blocking decently as well. So I think this Cowboys offense has some answers. And, both of these defenses are going to make plays ultimately. But like I said, I just think it comes down to these offenses and who's going to make the biggest plays, who's going to, when they need it the most, which quarterback is going to make those throws. And I think both of these quarterbacks are capable, but the question is, can both of these quarterbacks make it happen when it matters the most. I don't think either one of them have proven they can, sustainably in the league. But this far, I think Dak Prescott, I'm going to give him the nod. He's the veteran. He's been doing this longer than Brock Purdy. So I think this is going to be a really good game. Like you mentioned, game of the week. And it could come down to, Brock Purdy's the one that he gets the ball. He's the one that leads that game-winning drive. But ultimately right now, I'm going to give the nod to the Cowboys because I think defensively, both of these teams are really good. Defensively, they kind of cross out there. So the slight edge I see right now for the Cowboys is the quarterback, the most important position. So I'm going to pick the Cowboys on the road, man. Now, if I'm wrong and they lose, I'll be just as happy, but I think they win.
Yeah, some words I never thought you'd see is I'm taking Dak Prescott over just about anyone in the NFL, but
yeah,
it's going to lead us to our Monday night matchup, man. It's the Green Bay Packers. They travel to Vegas to play the Raiders, and the Raiders last week, the Chargers are on a bye this week, so we don't get to talk about them. But Staley 2 weeks in a row, he got clowned 2 weeks ago for making the same call he did and going for it in fourth down in his own territory. He's like, you know what? You guys thought it was so bad of a move. He's like, double down. Let me give it to you again. And they try to take the snap with the QB sneak, I think it was at the time, and Herbert had the hurt hand. They were even talking. It was a horrible play. And if it wasn't even for worse coaching and Mike McDaniel, not Mike, but Josh McDaniels. Sorry. If it wasn't for worse coaching than Josh McDaniels, the Raiders would have won that football game. The fact that McDaniels let a rookie quarterback on 1st and goal with plenty of time left, you had timeout, you let the rookie quarterback, go ahead and throw the football on a bootleg pass for a pick. And then you also have Staley telling Asante Samuel to go ahead and slide as well when they still had timeouts remaining. It is the worst coach game I probably ever watched in the last 5 minutes of football. But with that being said, man, I like the way the Packers are coached. Yeah. Matt LaFleur. I know they kind of struggled last week on Thursday night prime time, but that's that Thursday night game, man. It's a trap game for offense. Jordan Love didn't look up to par. Even the Packers defense didn't really look up to par. Maybe they were starstruck from Lil Wayne running them out the tunnel, whatever it was. I think they could have bounced back win here against the horribly coached Vegas Raiders.
Yeah, I like the Packers here as well on the road. Like you mentioned, a tough game last week for the Packers, but when you're the literally youngest team in the league, growing pains are expected. It just happens, with a young, inexperienced team. But Christian Watson, another week back, fully healthy. That defense has been playing pretty solid. Rashawn Gary has looked nice off the edge. A lot of pressures for him. He's made an impact through these couple games. But I want to see that run game get going as well for the Packers. But Jordan Love has been playing some solid football, a little up and down. But for the most part, I think he's been good enough. He showed to be, the ability to create, make a little bit with his legs. But like you mentioned, I think this is a really good coach team. Matt LaFleur has been scheming up some nice plays, some nice calls for this team. And, potentially Devontae Adams' revenge game won't really matter. I don't think the Raiders have much on offense. It's nice to see Josh Jacobs get going again, but that was against the Chargers defense. And like you mentioned, Brandon Staley and that whole thing, that's a whole nother story. I don't know why you have your quarterback with a taped up hand taking snaps under center, but that's another conversation, neither here nor there. Not good coaching at all, but I like the Packers, young team, still looking, get those wins, looking to even, compete for this division. It was a tough loss last week, but they still got a chance. They still play Detroit again. So it'll be really fun. Young team, a lot of talent. So it's kind of like a coin flip. Like, are we going to get the good Packers or are we going to get the bad Packers? I think this week against the Raiders team, not much hope for them. I think we get the good Packers team, and they get a fun win on the road.
Devontae Adams also banged up with that shoulder injury, so he might not get that revenge game as well. But that's going to wrap up our Week 5 pick'ems, man. And it's going to also wrap up episode 59 of the Goal to Go pod. You got any last comments, takes, anything like that?
No, not really, man. Dodgers playoff baseball, just have to wait a couple games for them to play. Well,
regardless, man, the Marlins are currently playing right now as I'm speaking. And by the time this is uploaded, they will either, win heading into a game 3 matchup, or I might not speak about the Marlins the rest of the year, but 0-0 ball game, bottom 3 against the Phillies. Little NL East divisional matchup for the wild card round. See if the Marlins and those, Arise, Jazz, and just whatever guys they were able to piece together for this roster. Jake Berger looking good. Josh Bell, decent pickup as well. So, it's fish up, man. I know it's fins up, man. It's go fish right now for the Marlins. It's time to ride. Marlins been long awaited since they won a playoff series. So, hopefully 2023 is the answer, man. Nonetheless, man, you're Dodgers. Maybe we see each other in an NLCS in a perfect world, but maybe not.
Hopefully the Braves as
just out.
Another story, yeah.
Ronald Acuna, man, easily NL MVP. No discussion about it. No ifs, ands, or buts, but nonetheless, man, episode 59, Goal to Go Pod on TikTok. Like, comment, share, Goal to Go, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all that. Like, comment, sub, share as well, man. And until next week with episode 60, we'll catch y'all, man. Peace.